Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Coding 101 is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com.
This episode of Coding 101 is brought to you by DigitalOcean. Simple and fast cloud hosting built for developers. Deploy an SSD cloud server in 55 seconds. Try it today for free. Visit DigitalOcean.com, and once you sign up, be sure to enter the promo code C101 in the billing section for a $10 credit. On this episode of Coding 101, we're getting back on the iOS road with Todd Perkins. Welcome to Coding 101. It's the show where we let you into the wonderful world of the Code Monkey / Code Warrior. I'm Father Robert Palliser, the digital Jesuit, and joining me is my super permanent mega Kamehameha massive expert guru guy, Lou Maresca. Lou, title no good. We gotta settle on one. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic. Great week. Feel very relaxed.
Now, I've noticed that you're not at your office in Microsoft where you normally would be for a Coding 101 episode. What's going on here?
A little break. They gave us a little break, so we're we worked really hard last couple months, and they're giving us some time off.
Whoa, wait, is that how it works at Microsoft? They just come in one day like, hey, you know what? You guys have been killing it. Why don't you take the next week off?
Not normally, let me tell you that.
Okay, good. Well, you know what? Let's vacation aside, we actually do have a really cool show for you. We're going to be jumping back into iOS programming. Now, for those folks who have been wanting to make apps for, let's face it, the most profitable mobile platform on the market, you're definitely going to want to stay tuned. But before we do that, Lou, this past weekend, I got the privilege, the honor of hosting the new Screensavers, and that meant I got to speak with the CEO, Greg Friesmuth from Skyworks Systems, or Skyworks Aerial Systems. I'm always confusing those. And he's got a very interesting concept. It's something that I think we could bring both to, say, the Coding 101 and my know-how community, and that is, how can you make people learn by building things? And when I say building things, I mean both the hardware and the software. This is something that we've spoken about with some of our guests, right? This idea of foundational knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, hands-on is always better. I mean, it always gets you, deep into it, gets you kind of moving, and it helps you remember stuff. So definitely.
Yeah. What his company is trying to do specifically is they're trying to take something that's very popular right now, drones. And he's trying to give people a Lego kit of sorts, a way to combine different pieces of hardware, software, sensors, Linux computers, along with code that you could develop on the IDE you got on your computer, be it a JavaScript or, say, a .NET module that you can load into one of these computers and have your drone follow a waypoint, or maybe do agricultural research. In any case, he can explain it much better than I can. And without further ado, here's Greg Friesmuth from Skyworks Aerial Systems.
We saw that a lot of the drone kits out there were very kind of high-level barrier to entry for people who are just looking to get into the hobby or looking to learn about the technology. So we created a very simple, compatible with a lot of other friendly technologies out there, unit that we really think makes it a lot easier to get into drones and creating new drone applications. It's compatible with like Arduino, LittleBits. The LittleBits Cloud Bit can talk to it. It connects via Wi-Fi to your computer. There's a great ground control software we've built. You can pre-program it and have it do waypoints and missions and all that stuff. So it's very, very capable and priced pretty reasonably for somebody who's just looking to get into this market.
Let me ask you something. We do cover drones pretty extensively on the Twit TV network, especially in our Maker show. We've also done it in our coding show and even in our enterprise show. But there are still people who will look at something like this and say, it's a toy. You're trying to do something more with this. This is what I like about this project. With the sensors and with the programmability of the controller, you're trying to show people all the possibilities in building drones.
Yep, exactly. There's every time we talk to somebody new about drones, they say, oh, I have this really cool idea of how to use this at my work, or how I thought I was thinking about this the other day. What if somebody had a drone that did this? And we're like, that's a great idea. Why don't if you knew how to do it, you could do it, sort of thing. Or if somebody who is a tech developer or somebody who has decent electronics ability can pick it up and build a drone that does that. We kind of want to enable that in them.
Let's say I back the project at the highest level. What will I get, and what can I create with what I get?
So you get the plastic pieces, you get the main frame. That comes with a brain board that we call Lucy, which is compatible with Intel Edison. So you can actually just pop an Intel Edison to the top of this thing, and it has Arduino headers on it, so you can put your favorite Arduino shield into it. You know, you can talk to the Edison. It's a full, Linux computer running on there. There's a second processor on there that runs all the flight control dynamics, so you don't actually have to worry about any of that. Very intelligent motor controllers built into the board. So there's one board for the entire drone. You put it in, you connect the motors, and you're good to go. We think that the melding of software and hardware is very important to the future of this technology. And the software we've built is really easy to use. It's built as this very beginner platform where I know basic JavaScript. I can pick that up and learn to program my drone. So there's lesson plans built into it. There's actually coding blocks. It will detect the sensors that you plug in, so you can just plug in a sensor. It'll pop up on your web interface. It's accessible through your phone, so you can actually change your code while you're out in the field on your phone, just connecting to the Wi-Fi hotspot it creates. And a big focus of us and a big passion is teaching sort of the next generation of people who are going to be doing this. So we've been having people donate classroom packs as part of our Kickstarter. And the classroom packs are going to schools, at high schools, where people will, kids will learn how to do this stuff. And so another piece of it is safety. So we've actually created very intelligent speed controllers. So if you actually put your finger in the rotors, they'll detect that and stop the rotor instantly. So which is kind of adding a little bit of safety and intelligence. We also use a really lightweight, flimsy plastic, so they're not like the carbon fiber blades.
Well, I mean, you're designing this to teach people, and when people are learning the first time, they're going to make stupid mistakes, and that would be a stupid mistake.
Exactly. So
I noticed you've got so this expansion board on top here. These are all I2C expansion ports.
Yeah.
So I could really load this thing up with every kind of industry standard sensor I can think of.
Yep.
LiDAR, cameras, height sensors, barometers.
Yep.
What's your ultimate end game for this? I mean, yeah, you're selling the kit right now, which, by the way, where can they find it?
It's on Kickstarter right now. There's a few days left in our Kickstarter campaign. We're looking to get people to jump in and join on it. So if you just search Eedu on Google, I believe it's the first result for our Kickstarter. So
yeah. It's Greg Friesmuth from Skyworks Aerial Systems. Thank you very much for coming on to the new Screensavers. I love drones, and I love to see the fact that you're trying to make it easy for people to get into the field.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
You know, Lou, one of the things that really strikes me about this is, of course, in one of my other shows, in Know-How, we're building quads all the time. We're building drones every week, almost every week. There was 2 months that we didn't do it out of like the last year. But the hardware is pretty much the hardware. Go down to the Eedu kit or the home-built kit or to one of the store-bought kits. The hardware is going to look the same. The big differentiator, and the one that is making it a multi-billion-dollar industry, is the software. I saw 2 projects coming up on GitHub. One was for agriculture. They were trying to make an open source package that would load up on something about the processing power of a Raspberry Pi. It would sit shotgun to the flight controller of a drone, and you could program a waypoint navigation around your field. So if you're a farmer, you send your drone up, it does a loop around your field, and then it comes back and it actually analyzes what areas of your crops need more nutrients, more water, attention. I mean, that's amazing. That's something that you used to only get with thousands and thousands of dollars worth of gear or hours and hours of manpower. There was another one on GitHub that I found very intriguing because it's just starting. Someone wanted to be able to use millimeter radar on a drone combined with GPS to send it up and do land surveying. You know how you see the civil engineers with the survey tools? Well, this could cover an area that would take a team of civil engineers a week to cover in like 30 seconds. I mean, this
amazing.
And the wonderful thing about it is it's all programming. It's all the software. The hardware's the same. I really believe that this is going to be one of those areas where there's going to be a race. The next team of programmers is going to make the killer drone app. Sorry, excuse the pun there, but the killer drone app that everyone's going to need for their industry. I mean, How many drones do you have roaming around Microsoft?
Well, we have the ones that actually, they survey the main campus. So I've seen them actually roaming around. Most likely they're people that own them. I don't think Microsoft actually owns them, but you get video of people like, they post them online or in our internal network, but it's pretty amazing. I mean, what they can do with them. Yeah.
And it really does fit the Coding 101 motto, this idea of taking a real world problem, breaking it down into its components, and then figuring out a programming solution. That's exactly what we're doing, except now we're like on the forefront. I mean, if you're getting into this area, it's brand new. It's like when the Silicon Valley first started. Very few of the big players are in here. There's a lot of startups. There's a lot of individuals. There's a lot of programming groups. And I think maybe we could push the Coding 101 crew into making the next generation of smart drones.
I know.
Yeah, I figured. Now, I do want to give them a shout out. Zach, if you could show their Kickstarter page. Unfortunately, they got onto the new screensavers a little bit late. I wish they had come out earlier in the month where we could give them more of a lead. But, they're at 53,000. They need 100 grand. I'd love to be able to push them over the edge. I mean, it's less than a day left. They're probably not going to make it. But if you're interested in their kit, or if you want to support a local school by buying a kit for a local school, I think it's a worthy cause. I mean, if you're into hardware, electrical engineering, computer science, this is a great cause. What do you think, Lou?
Yeah, even if you're just into having fun, this looks like amazing. Looks like a lot of fun. I'm going to probably get it for my son.
Yeah, there we go. Well, folks, when we come back, we're going to be jumping into the iOS Part 2 module with Todd Perkins. But first, let's take a moment to thank the sponsor for this episode of Coding 101. Now, you've heard me describe this scenario several times if you've listened to Coding 101. And in the old days, when I grew up, back when the internet wasn't like these young whippersnappers, if we wanted to stand up a financial transaction server, we actually had to do it ourselves. We actually had to build the bare iron. We had to write the code to do the transaction securely. And of course, we had to contract with a finances company in order to make sure that those transactions would go someplace where they could be processed. It was a process that was fraught with just so many pitfalls. You could break your server and lose all that transactional data. You could possibly open up customer data to exploits, which is always a bad thing. Or you could just write it poorly and lose your business. Now, you could still do that today. You could rent a colo. You could get some space. You could get a server that's dedicated with its own bandwidth, or you could just go over to DigitalOcean. Now, DigitalOcean is the place where you go when you want to deploy anything. Those applications, those mobile services, those things that you need up and running right away. DigitalOcean is the place that you go when you want to start up a server and maybe grow it in the future. You can start small. Maybe you just want to rent a couple of minutes of time so that you can get your transactional database up. Maybe you need just an hour or two to test out the latest and greatest revision of your mobile app. Well, that's exactly what DigitalOcean lets you do with Droplets. It's used by over 400,000 developers, including TwitTV. We use it here to stand up applications when we want to test something on the TwitTV web server. I use it whenever I want to test transactional databases for the mobile apps that I've written for, well, my other organization. It lets you deploy and configure these applications via Droplets. Now, these Droplets run under a streamlined control panel and with a simple API. They let you choose your OS, be it Ubuntu, CentOS, Debian, Fedora, CoreOS, and FreeBSD. They give you a one-click install to deploy apps like Django, Docker, Drupal, LAMP, GitLab, MediaWiki, Node.js, WordPress, Ghost, Magneto, OwnCloud, Ruby on Rails, and more. And that list is just getting bigger. It's getting harder and harder for me to say that sentence in one breath. All their servers are built on hex-core machines with dedicated ECC RAM and RAID SSD storage. And their servers can have up to 20 CPUs, 64 gigabytes of memory, and 640 gigabytes of SSD storage space. It's highly scalable so that you can start small and grow as you need it. And you can deploy servers in regions all around the world, which means you can geolocate your services depending on where the demand is with 99% uptime. It's full featured. You get DNS management to manage your domains, and you can even use dedicated IPs if that's what you need to make your service work properly. You get web console access with HTML5 plus SSH, SFTP, and KVM VNC for virtual desktops. And it's got an extremely active community. This is one of the things that you look for in a company that does web services. If it's just them and you may be waiting a while to hear your answer. But when you've got a community, you can ask people who are like you, users of the project. Now, it's also easy to get started. You can get your own SSD cloud server up and running in under a minute, about 55 seconds. I've actually timed it. It's crazy how simple it is to stand something up immediately. Now, DigitalOcean has an incredibly affordable and straightforward pricing. There are no surprises. Their servers start at only $5 a month. And there's also hourly pricing available, starting at less than a penny per hour. But we're going to make it easy. Easy for you to get started today and deploy an SSD cloud server for free. No matter your project, no matter what you're doing, deploying the latest financial server, deploying the latest mobile app. I know you have all sorts of reasons why you don't want to try something new, but let me give you one reason that you won't have. And that is they're going to make it free. Visit DigitalOcean.com and create an account. Once you confirm your email and account information, go to the billing section and enter the promo code C101, and they'll give you a free $10 credit. That's enough to get you up and running with no risk to see if DigitalOcean is right for you. That's plenty to get started and plenty for you to find out if DigitalOcean is what you need to grow your business. That's DigitalOcean.com. And once you sign up, enter the code C101 in the billing section for a $10 credit. Again, that's DigitalOcean.com. And once you sign up, enter the code C101. And we thank DigitalOcean for their support of Coding 101. Hey, Lou, you feel like maybe doing a little bit of iOS programming?
Absolutely.
Without further ado, let's welcome back Todd Perkins, our iOS guru.
Thank you, Padre Lou, and we welcome you back to the Code Warrior segment of Coding 101. Of course, our Code Warrior is Todd Perkins again. He is our iOS guru. We found him at lynda.com, and we asked them, we said, hey, you know, we are kind of missing our iOS love. Do you think he could come onto the show? And of course, they said yes. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome him back to Coding 101. Todd Perkins, thank you very much for being here again.
Thank you.
When you last left us, you had just given us the interface. You had introduced our audience to Xcode. You had told them that, yeah, you're going to want a Mac or you're going to want a virtual machine that runs something that you can run Xcode on. And you had given us a quick tour of what the interface looks like. Now, hopefully, they've done their homework and they're familiar and they know what all the little buttons do and they know how to draw things on the screen. But now you want to give them the code to fill that in.
Exactly. So on my screen, we left off with some user interface elements. So once you've created them, you can delete them by single clicking. And then you're going to see handles. In some cases, handles all around the object. And here I have 8 handles around this switch. You might see more or less, like 2 in the example of this slider. So when you see that your object's selected, you can delete it by pressing the delete key on your keyboard. And so I'm going to delete these elements off of my screen. And then we're going to write some basic code. So I'll save the file, and then I'm going to go over to the Project Navigator, which is at the left side of the screen. This whole area is called the Navigator, and there are actually different sections that you can go to. So if you look at the top bar in the Navigator, you can click and change what you're seeing on the left side. So if you happen to not be seeing the Project Navigator, just click the folder icon at the top left of the Navigator. You can also show and hide the Navigator using the buttons at the top of the screen. So as we looked at in the previous movie, we hid and showed the utilities area with the button on the right. Well, the button on the left shows and hides the Navigator. And there it is.
So Tom, if you hover over the ones on the left over there, does it actually tell you what they are, or they
yeah.
need to be? Okay.
Yeah, if you hover over them, it'll tell you what they are.
Okay, cool.
When I'm working in Xcode, I'm mostly using, of course, the Project Navigator, and then I use the Find Navigator if I'm searching for something. And I can search for code in all of my projects and everything, or all the files in a given project. And then, of course...
That's useful if you have a lot of files or a lot of code, right? If you want to find like a function or a variable or something like that.
Yeah, it works great, and it'll give you all the references, and it's quite fast. So you're not going to take a while waiting for anything to load. So, and the editor is the main part of Xcode. That's this big rectangle in the center, and there's no option to hide the editor. It's just there all the time. And so that shows what you have selected in the navigator. So if I click on the view controller code file, then I'm seeing code in the navigator. And if I click on my project, then I see settings for my project in the navigator. Now, for this series of movies, we're not going to be publishing our application, but this is where you could go if you're going to publish your application. So you need to associate your app with code signing and that sort of thing. So you'd have to create an account, an iOS developer account, and download a provisioning profile so you can run it on an actual device. And you'd set that all up through Xcode, through this build settings area. If you want to see that later, we can look at that later on. But that's when you're basically publishing the application or testing on a physical device from your computer. And by the way, this is unrelated to code, but I want to say too, if you're planning on testing your application on an actual device, you're going to have to fork out the cash to Apple to become an iOS developer. Right now it's $99 US per year to do that. So unfortunately, you're stuck with testing on your computer in the simulator unless you enroll in that program.
But I mean, if you are going to be learning how to develop, eventually you're going to need that, right? I mean, and the process does take a little bit of time. So would you recommend they go ahead and fork that over earlier rather than later?
Yeah, I mean, if you have to make a business to become a business that publishes applications, you're looking at waiting a longer time. And so you definitely want to start that now. If you're going to, but you can also publish under your own name. Like I have some apps in the App Store under Todd Perkins. Check them out, by the way. They're cool. I just have some dumb games. I don't have anything particularly interesting.
Hey, oh, by the way, chat room, download them all right now. Go get them.
Download
That's
them.
it. Hey, you want to show support for our Code Warriors? Go get them right now.
You don't even have to spend any money.
There you go.
The reviews are better than money.
I mean, because one of the things I've noticed is simulators are great. I mean, I enjoy using them. They're mostly accurate, but there is nothing quite like being able to put it on the actual device and show people the physical format. This is how it looks on the phone. Hold it, see if it makes sense to you. That is much part of the testing environment as actually going through your code.
And up until last year, it was a lot easier because it was only one size iPhone. Now it's getting a little harder. Right? You get a lot more sizes and more form factors.
Yep, that's quite true. And I think simulators lie. Simulators lie.
They do. You're right. Android especially lies.
Yes. Yeah, they tell you lies. They tell you your app works and it doesn't work. So beware of that. But yeah, if you're serious about it and you're planning on releasing an app in the App Store, then you do want to sign up. It is a separate fee to become an iOS developer and to become an OS 10 developer. So,
and quick note, to all of our geeks out there, I know there is a way that if you jailbreak your phone, you can get your apps onto a device without actually having to do the program. Don't do that. If you actually want your program to go out into the world, that is a horrible, horrible way to do it. And I almost guarantee you're going to have some really bad consequence sometime down the line, which I've already seen. So there. Pay the $99. Pay the man.
It's worth it. You know, even apps that aren't that great do make money. So even the worst apps I've made have made at least that back in a year. So,
by the way, you have kicked off a nice little flame war in the chat room between people who are saying, you know, if poverty is your thing, then you're probably not going to want to become an iOS developer.
Oh no!
Right. There's alternatives though. Like I gave a suggestion. One good suggestion is you go buy some used iMacs, and there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry. I sidetracked us this time. That was my fault. Bring us back in.
It's all good. It is all good. We were going to talk about code. I think I'd talked enough about the interface. Let's go to the code. So we're going to learn some awesome Objective-C and where you're going to write that in your basic application. Of course, when you're making a more complicated application, you're going to make a whole bunch of classes. But for a simple application, for Hello World, or the hello world the second, you're going to write your code in viewcontroller.m. So I'm going over to
real quick.
Yeah,
real quick. Objective-C is just kind of a variant or the movement of kind of from C to more of an objective-oriented language, right? It's not. It's more like C than it is like an object-oriented language, right?
Yeah. It's got object-oriented stuff in it, but then it's C. You can write C as well, and you're not going to have any problems in your code. So Objective-C is kind of like C, but also. Okay, I guess you could think of it maybe like C++, but a different kind of plus. It's C plus extra stuff, but
it's a plus.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It's like C plus other stuff, but it's not C++. Okay. So that's probably about as confusing as I could make this. So I'm going to go inside of the viewDidLoad method. And so, when I say method, what I'm talking about is this line of code on line 17. And it starts with a hyphen. So you can find your methods in your code in Objective-C with the hyphens. And what we see after the hyphen is a value that's in parentheses. And that's the return value for that particular method. So if you're new to coding, just think of it as you put the pizza in the oven, and then a cooked pizza comes out. So this is the thing that comes out, the result, okay? A method is a bunch of code that happens, whatever you want, and when it's done, the finished product that's sent back out of the oven or method is what you're going to put in here. And hopefully that made sense. It probably didn't, but
so
yes.
In order for you to put the method here, though, does it have to be like does the skeleton of that method have to be over in the header file, or you don't have to have it in the header file?
It doesn't. It has to be in there if you want to make it accessible to other classes. So like right now, like if I made my own custom method, like right here. So I make my method right here. And if I try to run do magic in another file, even if I import this class, it's not going to be seen. So the header file reveals methods to other classes. So you basically, it's a private method.
Almost like privatizing it, yeah.
Yeah, it's privatizing it if you just put it in here, and then you make it public when you just put it in the header. So,
got it, cool.
Okay, so back to that weird oven thing I was talking about that probably didn't make any sense. So let's create some basic variables. So you're going to want to write your code within the curly braces, okay? If I need to stop thinking about ovens. I skipped dinner for this, so I'm thinking about ovens right now.
You've got our entire chat room thinking of pizza, so
that's right. It's got orders of pizza now.
It is great. It is great. Okay. So you want to write your code under this comment and then before that closed curly brace. So inside of viewDidLoad right there. And so let's just create a simple integer. Integer is a whole number. So 1, 2, 3, etc.
So Todd, real quick, could you explain just the signature of the method there? Like what is that? Yeah. What are you seeing up there?
Oh, you talking about right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. See, I didn't get to that. Thank you. So we have the return data type that happens as a result of the method, and then the name of the method is then placed here. And you're going to use, the convention is camel case, just like any other language, which means we start with a lowercase letter, it's all one word, and each subsequent word starts with a capital letter. And then
void means it just returns nothing, right? Void is just
void
no
means it
or whatever.
returns nothing.
And it can return integer or something else too, right? If you wanted it to.
Yeah, it can return an integer or a string or whatever. Any kind of data type or your own custom data types, of course. But yeah, so for now, we'll just use the void ones. So under the comment, I'm just going to create an integer variable. And of course, this is a variable that's known only within this method. So I can only use it within this method. And in Objective-C, you just type the data type, which was int, all lowercase. There's a few different types of integers, but I don't want to go into that now, but you can look that up in the Objective-C documentation. But for now, I'm just going to use int. And we'll call this mynum. And then so mynum is the name of the variable. And then we can give it a value with an equal sign. and then I'll name this 5. I mean, I'll give it a value of 5, and then a semicolon to end the line. So you think of semicolon like a period in the sentence. And you notice that the number is blue, and that's the default coloring for numbers in Xcode, so you can easily identify them. And so on this line, all we did is we created a variable. You think of a variable like kind of like a noun in language. They're the things of code. So there can be numbers, like somebody's score in a game. It could be somebody's name, some kind of text value or something like that.
And in this case, it's just scoped. That variable is not accessible anywhere else but inside this method, right?
Exactly. If I tried to access my num in here, I'm going to get an error or a warning or something like that. Right.
Got it.
And so now we'll look at just logging a value to the console. Actually, no, let's see. Let's create a string first. I think that'll make creating a value make more sense. Okay. So there's 2 different groups of variables in Objective-C. There's primitives and there's pointers. And I just realized I'm moving my hands all over the place, and I'm sure that's not even within the camera's range. So sorry about that. I'm animated right now. Okay, so we have pointers and we have primitives. So primitives are just numbers, like an integer or a floating point number or a decimal number. A Boolean value, which is true or false. Okay, those are all primitives. And primitives are not pointers. Now, a pointer refers to a location in memory. And so we have the primitives, which are the numbers, and then everything else is going to be a pointer variable. So I'm going to show you how to create a pointer variable now. In Objective-C, a string is not a primitive, it's a pointer variable. And that's different from a lot of other languages. So
if you've actually watched, so the viewers actually watched the C episode that we did, we talked a little bit more in depth about pointers and what they do and how they handle your variable data and what the type is and how it stores the value and so on and so forth. So in this case, you're saying that there's some base types that you can use that are, don't require you to use pointers, and then there's other types, or all other types require you to use pointers.
Yes.
Got it.
I definitely watched that stuff about pointers. Good, yeah. So in Objective-C, strings are pointers, and you reference them with the class NSString. And many Objective-C classes are prefixed with NS. And that comes from next step, which is kind of, the short version is that it comes from way back in the early pre-Apple days, or when Steve Jobs wasn't at Apple. They used a language called Next Step, and all this stuff got brought into OS 10 or the Mac OS, and so it's kind of left over from another framework.
I was always wondering what that meant, because it just makes sense to just use string. Why don't they just use string?
Yeah, it's
come on.
Yeah, it was basically before. I don't know how much detail I want to go into. It basically it's they have instead of using like a namespace, they prefix classes in Objective-C with some kind of thing like that, like NS for some. There's a lot of classes like this view controller class. If you look at the header file, it's a subclass of UI view controller. So all the UI objects in Objective-C start with UI. So yeah,
makes sense.
Okay. So the class you're going to use is NSString, and then after NSString, you're going to type an asterisk, and that's going to denote your pointer. And then we call this my string, and then we'll just write a string in here. And you're going to notice something that's also different about Objective-C and other languages. This NSString data type, when we create one shorthand by just using the quotes, you can put an @ symbol before that. And so Think of it as a string as kind of like an object wrapper for a string. And for those of you that are new to programming, a string is basically a text value, and an object wrapper is something that enables you to do more things with that text value. That's the short version of that.
So Todd,
yeah.
so we don't run out of time. Why don't we can we show them how you can link the UI components to using variables and functions and so on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do that. I was going to log this to the console, but we can just go straight to putting that inside of a text field.
Cool.
All right, so I'm going to save this, and yeah, we'll go over to our storyboard. And so we have this label on the screen already, and I'm going to leave it just right where it is, and we're going to connect this to our code. And the way that you do that, there are several different ways to do it. Here, I'm just going to show, I was going to show all of them. How much time do we have left in this episode? I don't want to...
Yeah, we're okay. We've got a good 13 or so minutes left. So.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. I'm going to show you my favorite way first because it's the best way and it's the easiest. So what you do is you're going to click this button at the top of the screen. It's called the Assistant Editor. So there's the two groups of 3 buttons. It's the group on the left, and it's the one in the center that's 2 intersecting circles. So if you click on that, you're going to see the Xcode interface change a little bit. And it might look a little bit confusing. So what you're looking at here is you're looking at code on the right side. And just to give some more space, I'm going to hide the utilities area and the navigator. So that's a lot easier to see now, hopefully. So we have my user interface on the left and my code on the right. And we're going to, yeah. So we want to connect these two. So to do that, we want to make sure we're looking at the header file. So actually, you probably don't have to use the header file now, but I'm going to do it the old way and use the header file just for old time's sake. So to get to the header file, you want to click right here where you see the name of your file. So you might see the header file already, but I was looking at viewcontroller.m. So I clicked the name of the file up here in the jump bar at the top of the center of the screen, and I just click that and choose viewcontroller.m. If you still don't see, viewcontroller.h. If you still don't see that, you can click automatic and just kind of drill through your project and find the appropriate file under there. Okay, so we have viewcontroller.h on the right, and we have check out my sweet label on the left. Now, what we want to do is we're going to drag from the label to the code, except we're going to hold the control key on the keyboard. So hold control first, and then click from the label, and you should see that it's highlighted and that you have this line coming out. If you don't see the line, then start over and try it again.
So what is that, a right click or is that a left click?
That is a left click. That is hold control, and it's not right click. It's control left click.
Got it. I forget we're using a Mac. There's no such thing as right click, right?
Well, yeah. Well, even though if I do like right click it, because the new Macs have the the right click, it doesn't. Oh, I guess it does. Never mind. I was wrong. I thought it didn't work, but you can right click and drag. So right click and drag. If that feels weird, hold control and then click and drag. And then you want to release it in between the @ interface line of code and the @ end. So I'm going to release it right between lines 12 and 13. And then you get this pop-up, and it says connection. And for the connection, it says outlet. And outlet is for variables. And if you look at, okay, you don't have the other option now. If you don't see outlet right there, then try it again. That means that something went wrong. So make sure to try it again. There's another type of connection called action, and that's for like when you click a button, if you want a block of code to execute. So I have outlet selected, and then I'm going to name this. So this is the name of my variable and how I'm going to access it through my code. I'll call this my label. And then you're going to leave UI label for the type. Again, if you don't see that, maybe you click something wrong, so you want to try clicking and dragging again. And so hit cancel and try it again. And then leave storage at weak and click connect. And so it writes this line of code for you. Now, the old way to do it was to write this code by hand. And it's long enough to where it's easy to get some stuff wrong. So it's nice to be able to just click and drag. So I'm going to save both of these files and close the assistant editor and go over to the standard editor by clicking that button on the left of the left group.
So that's basically bound the data of the label to your code. So now you actually have the ability to change the label from your code or vice versa?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah. So I can I open up the navigator. It makes a variable in your code that you can use, and that variable is now connected to that label. So I can modify its properties and they'll adjust in the code. So if I look in viewcontroller.h, I see that code. And so this is the name of my label. And see that asterisk, this is a pointer, as we talked about. If it's not an integer or a basic value, it's going to be a pointer. So it's my label. And that's how I can refer to it in my code. So under view.load, I can type my, okay, it's a property. Okay, since it's a property, in order to get code hinting for it, I'm going to go under implementation. And properties in Objective-C and Xcode enable you to access objects using dot syntax. And you can have Xcode, you can either write getter and setter methods yourself, or you can have Xcode synthesize, or you can have the language synthesize them for you. So you can synthesize them with an @synthesize call. So I type @synthesize and my label, and this is right under the implementation line of code. So I add that. And so this basically creates simple getter and setter methods for my label, which is cool because now I can access that just directly in my code. So if I go right under the line where I made my string and I wanted to put that value inside of my label, I can type my label dot text, and I set it equal to a string, and I can either use my string from the previous line, or I can type an NS string, so it needs to have that @ symbol, and then run the application. And then we should see the my string variable's value inside of the label at the top left of the screen, and sure enough, there it is. So to review that, you just open up the assistant editor, click the button in the toolbar, and then you go to the header file, and you just right-click and drag, or hold Control and then click and drag to a line of code to connect it, and then you can access it through the variable name that you created.
Now, is there a way for you to, you've done that to properties, now is there a way to link to methods too?
Yes, there is. And so we can do that with a button. So let's do that.
Cool.
Okay, let's see. I'm going to open up the navigator. And so what we'll do is we'll just make like a button underneath this text. And when you click the button, then the text will change. So I'm looking for a button. And instead of scrolling through forever and finding the button, I'm just going to type button in the search field. And there it is. And in iOS 8, buttons don't have a background. So it doesn't have like a rectangle in the background. It just looks like text, but it is a button. So if you click on it, things are going to happen.
Now, Todd, real quick, just maybe real quick, you can tell me can you actually customize controls so you don't actually have to use the controls in the little repository there? Can you actually create custom ones as well?
Yeah. You mean like custom ones that are added to here, or are you talking about customizing a button so that it doesn't look like this?
I think either or. Can you add them to the repository, or can you just create your own custom control?
I would imagine you can. I haven't seen how to add them to the repository. There's probably some kind of hack that you can do where you edit some XML file that's buried somewhere. But you can customize them to your liking by just selecting them and then going to the settings in the utilities area. So at the right side of the screen, there's a row of buttons at the top. And you can click the one that looks like a mini slider, And this has like a few basic settings on it. So I can change, the text on the button and kind of how it appears and
Got it.
whole bunch of settings.
If you wanted to give it a background, you could put a background in here if you wanted.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Got it.
And it's not hard to do. You do all that through here, and you can adjust other settings through all of these buttons at the top. And that's how you do it. Good question. Thanks for asking that. So let's connect this to some code. So we can do the same thing. Now, instead of writing that method out from scratch, we can just open up the assistant editor. And I'll hide the side views. I'm going a little bit faster since we talked about this a minute ago. And I'm going to change the current file that I'm viewing to viewcontroller.m. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to just drag it into the code. Now, this works for Swift. It might not work the same for Objective-C, but I'm going to make some space in my code, and then I'm going to click and drag using right-click or holding Control and clicking and dragging from the button into my code. It's right under Synthesize. So when I release the mouse button, the connection says action. So again, if you don't see action, try it again. And then I'm going to name this method. I'll call this button clicked. And I'm going to leave the settings at the default. The type is ID. That's when you click the button, data gets sent to that method from what button triggered the action. And that would be this button that they clicked on. So you can have a reference to the variable that created the action if you need to. And then we can change the event that triggers the action too. This is touch up inside. So you're releasing your finger on the button. And these aren't clicks, these are touches because we're developing for a touch screen on iOS. So I'm going to just leave that at the default and click connect. And there's my method right there. It says the return type is IB action, which actually means void, but it's connected to an interface builder, IB, that's what that's for, action. So the return type is void, but this says that it's a special kind of void that's connected to something that's a user interface element. So in here, I can modify my label, so my label.text, and I can set it equal to a custom string. For example, button was clicked.
And that little @ symbol you have to put before the string, does that just mean string literal? Everything that's in there has to go, or what does it mean?
That means that is shorthand for creating an NS string. Instead of saying make a new NS string instance, we just use the @ symbol and then the string, and it makes it an NS string.
Got it. Okay.
So that is it actually. If I just test the application, I'll save it just to be safe. You shouldn't have to save it. It should just save when you click the run button. And I'm going to go back to the standard editor. Standard view, make sure everything's good.
And all this fancy hookup that it's doing, is it putting it somewhere, or is it just the compiler knows by some naming convention you're using, or where does it actually do the hookup?
That's all in. It's actually inside of the storyboard. If you look at the utility, if I look at the utilities view, and I have a button, either one of these selected, because they're both selected, connected to code, I can click on the connections button, which is a circle with the arrow on it. And I scroll down and I can see what methods are connected to methods in my code. So under sent events, I see that the touch up inside event is connected to the button clicked method inside of view controller.
Oh,
and you can connect multiple methods to the same action, and you can connect the same action to multiple events. So
cool. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of customization there. And so, yeah, like the other way to do it is to like click and drag from here. Like I would write a method in my code, and then I would like click and drag from here onto my button and connect it in that way. So that's the long way to do it. But the short way to do it is what I showed with the assistant editor.
Got it.
So let's test the app and see what we get. So to review, we have this button that's connected to that method, and in viewcontroller.m, we have the button clicked method that's changing the value that's inside of a text label. So I'll run the application and see what we get when we click the button. So I'll click on the button, and boom, button was clicked.
Woohoo!
Yay, huzzah.
And if you had paid the $99, you actually could put that on the App Store right now.
You could put it on the App Store. Well,
Millions of
thing about
copies sold.
there are a lot of rules about what you can put in the App Store. This would definitely get rejected.
Yes, I think it falls under duplicate functionality.
Yeah, duplicate functionality, not useful enough. I've sent cheesy little apps to the App Store and they get rejected. Like Apple's like, this app does not do enough cool stuff. It is not allowed in our store. So it's a long ways away from the fart applications making hundreds of thousands of dollars.
No. The Gem application. What was that? It was
Gem?
$1,000 or $10,000. You only had to get 1 or 2 people to buy it.
Oh, the I am rich thing? Is that
exactly. Well, Todd, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this episode. But of course, we like to leave our audience with a little bit of homework. So I know you just dropped a lot of knowledge on them. What would you like them to do? Now that they have the interface, now that they have a basic understanding of how coding works inside of Xcode, what do you want them to practice before we get to next week?
Well, we looked at buttons. We looked at text fields or text labels. You could try dropping a different text element in there. Maybe search for text in the search bar and use a text field or a text view that you drag onto the screen and hook that up to your code and see if you can change that text by the click of a button.
Fantastic. And, of course, that was stick. We need carrot. What's the carrot for next week? What are we going to be getting into?
Next week, we are going to get into actually building an application. I want to build an app that uses some basic code. I don't want to make it too complicated, but it's going to be simpler than our Hello World app, something that actually that could be released on the App Store.
That's definitely something that we can look forward to. Todd, of course, I'm going to say this every time. We got you from lynda.com. They've been a long supporter of the show. We asked them if we could get your contact information because we really wanted to have you on as our iOS guru. But you can't just be found on lynda.com. They can find you on the interwebs. Where do they go if they want to see you and your work?
You can find me at Twitter, and my handle is AskTodd.
Ask Todd. That's Todd Perkins. He is our iOS guru. He will be back to start the app build. Hey, Lou, what do you think? You think maybe we should go back to ourselves at the whole in-body experience back over at the other set?
Transportation, let's go.
Let's do it. So, Padre, Lou, back to you.
You know, Lou, I'm actually really excited for this next module because I know people are going to see that it's very close to what we did when you were showing us how to make an app in Visual C.
Right, exactly. And the note-taking app is like really everyone needs to be able to do it, and it's a good app to start with. And you can show how to load from disk, and you can show how to load from other places. Maybe we can throw some homework out to people to be able to load from other places, maybe like a web service, or some like Dropbox or something like that. So it'd be kind of a cool app to start with.
Right, and this is definitely one you're going to want to take notes on because when we get to the Twit API segments, you can combine the two. You could make an Android app, an iOS app. You could make a Windows app, a Mac OS X app. I just love the fact that we're starting to get to this point where if people have followed us since the beginning, they can start bringing together all those disparate pieces of knowledge to create the app for the platform that they want, the way they want to do it.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I mean, if you think about it, what do you have? Android pretty much is what's left, right? So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we did a little bit of Java, so yeah. I guess we could do Android and probably OS X, some native OS X applications. But other than that, we're getting close to doing the cycle.
That's right.
Yeah. Lou Maresca. Lou Maresca, of course, is my what did we say? Super special permanent King Kamehameha co-host. And they can find you at Microsoft. Of course, not this week because you got the week off for good behavior. But where else can they find you and the work that you do?
So you can always find me on Twitter at LouMM. And then, of course, you can always find my daily work at crm.dynamics.com.
There you go. And as always, you could find our show, Coding 101, at twit.tv/code. If you go there, you'll find all of our back episodes, including all the different programming modules and wildcard interviews that we've done. If you want to see what we did with Perl or PHP or with C#, or maybe you want to jump back into our Java, that's the place to go. You can download them to your device and watch them at your leisure. That's also a place where you can subscribe. If you click that little subscribe button, you get this drop-down menu that lets you choose what format you want. Do you want audio? Do you want video? Do you want it in a high-definition format? Do you want it in standard def? Do you want it into your iPhone, your Android, your Mac, your PC, your desktop, your laptop? We give you all those choices because, well, that's what we do. Also, don't forget that we've got a Google Plus group. If you go to Google Plus and just search for Coding 101, you'll be able to jump in. It's a great place to go if you want to ask questions or if you want to be a mentor to an up-and-coming programmer. Here in the show, we often talk about how the holes of knowledge has to be filled in. We can't give you everything in an hour-long or 30-minute show per week. So if you join that group, you can ask people how to get from lesson to lesson to lesson. Also, don't forget that you can find us on Twitter. You'll find Lou at LouMM. You'll find me at PadreSJ. If you follow us, you'll find out what we're going to be covering each and every single week. You'll also be able to suggest guests and topics for future shows. If there's a language that you really want us to get to, if there's a person that you want us to interview in a wildcard episode, that's the place to do it. Remember, that's at LouMM and at PadreSJ. Finally, I want to thank everyone who makes this show possible. Of course, that's our viewers like you. It's Lisa, it's Leo, it's LouMM, and my super fantastic TD. That's right, Zach Eskimo. Zach, could you please tell the folks where they can find you on the Twit TV network?
Thank you, Padre. You guys can find me on Twitter like everybody else. I'm at Eskimo Zach, and that's Zach spelled Z-A-C-H.
We'll see you next time here on Coding 101. Until then, I'm Father Robert Balaser. That other guy is Lou Maresca. And Lou, do you want to say it together? End of line.